Well, hi guys. My name's Gabby. This is my husband Matt,
Hello.
and we have been doing this for pilot parents. I think this is our fourth pilot parents class. And then I myself was a pilot parents advocate back in 2016. And so I went through the program. I think it's amazing. I met a lot of wonderful people who I still am doing things with today. And I think it's just a great way to be more involved in the community and know what's available to you guys and your kids. So, like Marianne said, we are both here in Tucson. I work at a behavioral health clinic as the clinical director. I teach at the U of A, and Matt works with adaptive athletics here in Tucson at the University of Arizona. You want to tell them what you do?
Sure. I am the digital media content creator, social media, and branding and marketing for adaptive athletics at University of Arizona, all their wheelchair sports.
So we're gonna tell you guys a little bit about how the independent movement influences our life, and we're gonna really go into our story because I think our story kind of leads by example. I think it's a very different lens than traditional rehabilitation. It really puts the individual with the disability in the driver's seat of their own life and lets them make their own choices and mess up and fail too and take responsibility for those failures and learn from them just like anybody else. And it's okay as long as you learn from it and move on, as opposed to a lot of services where it's like we have to do everything physically possible to make sure this person doesn't fail. So if that means throwing every support we have at them and making a lot of decisions for them, that's what we'll do. So we kind of flip the script on that and say independent is better, self-sufficient is better. And one of my favorite independent living principles is called dignity of risk. And you'll hear this explained throughout our story, but basically what that means is that disabled people have the same right to take a risk and fail as anybody else, right? None of us are guaranteed any outcome. We try, and if we succeed, that's awesome. And if we don't, we hit the reset button and we try again. Um, and the opposite side to that is I think dignity of risk also means that when you take the risk and it pays off, you get to take responsibility for that success, right? It's your dignity as a human being and as a person. And I think that that's really important. So basically, I'll just start by telling you guys a little bit about myself, and then you'll see how Matt fits in too, because we met a really long time ago. So I am one of 6 kids. I have a twin sister who doesn't have any disabilities, one older sister, and then the rest are younger than me. Basically, when I was born in the late 80s, my mom knew nothing about raising a kid with a disability, right? My twin sister and I were her first kids. And then after like a bunch of tests and all that, we found out that I had cerebral palsy. And so my mom's kind of way to sum that all up. And parents ask her all the time, like, what did you do? How did you do it? She was like, well, I didn't know how to raise a kid with a disability, right? They don't come with a handbook. No kids come with a handbook. So I just raised a kid because I didn't know what else to do. And actually that's kind of been the precipice to like my whole life, is that I was never treated any differently, and the expectations set for me were never any different than for my siblings or my peers. So I think one of the stories that I always tell in this talk, and I think it illustrates it really well, we used to go on like summer vacation to New Jersey. We vacationed at the Jersey Shore, and the Ocean City Boardwalk had like all of these rides and all of these things that you could do. And there was this big like obstacle course with like rope and all of these things that you had to climb through. And at the end of the obstacle course, there was this big slide, right? And all I said to my mom, like, we're watching all my siblings climb through this thing, and I'm like, that slide looks really cool. And she's like, oh, you want to go down the slide? And I'm like, mom, like, hello, there's like rope and all of this. And I'm like 8, so I'm like, this is not happening. And she's like, okay. And it took us, she literally like dragged me through the whole ropes course because she was like, she wants to go down the slide. And we were like up and down and all of these things. I think I like lost my pants at one point. Like it was an ordeal, right? But and everybody was like, what are you doing? And she was like, she wants to go down the slide. So that's what we're gonna do. And I did, and the slide was awesome. So it was like that just I think that kind of just illustrates it really well. Is she always made sure that I was included, but I like to make the difference between like inclusion and integration, right? Because you can quote include somebody who's sitting in the back of the classroom or wherever you're including them, but if they're not like participating in the activities, they're not fully integrated into what's going on. And so I was fully integrated as much as I could possibly be. And I think that that helps a lot. Um, I think as I got older, I kind of figured out that I was different more so than I realized when I was younger, right? So that's more a result of environment. That's like kids around you noticing that you're different. That's like people making comments, different things like that. And so I started to realize, I'd say mostly as like a preteen, that I was like, oh, okay, like people are gonna have different opinions about this than I do or my family does. But for the most part, we got through it together, and that's kind of how we did everything. I think the other biggest thing about like that early part of my life is that I had the same expectations as anybody else in my house. So if you had to do chores to earn money, I had to do chores to earn money. If you had to get certain grades in school, I had to get certain grades in school. And I remember people telling my parents, like, she's going through enough. Like, why are you so hard on her? Like, her life is harder, this, that, the other. And it was like, no, like, first of all, I had a twin sister, right? So how are you gonna look at somebody that's my age and be like, you have to do this, but she doesn't? Like that wasn't gonna fly. So she kind of kept she was like my cheat sheet, right? Like if Stephanie was doing it, I should probably figure out a way to do it myself. And I think that came for like social things and friends and all of that too. It was like, okay, this is what she's doing and this is what I want to be doing. And I think that really kind of helped us with the whole like keeping everybody sort of on the same page and on the same track. Until I got to be about 14 or 15, and that's when this guy comes into the picture. Um, I had, and this is like a really long story, so I try to keep this part pretty short. But I had a major surgery. Orthopedic surgery was like all the rage for kids with CP at that point. It was like, if we make their legs straighter and rotate all of their bones that are in the right, wrong direction and all of these things, they're going to have a better quality of life. It's going to be easier for them to move around and all this other stuff. I think the important thing to note before I get into the next part of that is that I was never in any pain. So this is not me saying your kids shouldn't have surgery. I think everybody should make that decision for themselves. For me personally, it was, looking back on it, I don't know what we were trying to fix because I was doing pretty okay and nothing hurt and I was getting around pretty well. It was just this idea of, we go to like this world-renowned surgeon and he's like showing us these like before and after videos of kids like running through fields. Like it sounds funny, but like that's what was happening. And we were like, yeah, that looks cool, right? And I was old enough to say like, I want that too. So it wasn't even all my parents. Unfortunately, fast forward a couple months, and I was one of a few kids that summer who had similar surgeries who just didn't respond well as far as the outcome. And there were kids on the floor that did great. There was no real rhyme or reason. They didn't do anything, quote, wrong in the surgery, right? Like mechanically, my legs are the way they're supposed to be now. But they worked better before. And so with all of that and the trauma of all of that, I came out of the surgery not really able to do a lot of the things that I was doing, like dress myself or care for myself or like all those things you do every day that make you more independent. I wasn't really able to do a lot of them, and I had to transition from a walker to a wheelchair. So it was like a whole sort of new way of life for me, and I didn't handle it very well, to say the least. And so at that point, I went through like months and months of intensive rehab. I lived at the rehab hospital by my house. Like it was a whole big thing. And my mom and a friend were talking, and the friend advertised this program that we met at as a therapy camp. She's like, look, you've done everything. It's been a year. Like, we've all tried to help her. This isn't getting any better. And she's miserable. And believe me, I can be the first to admit that I was miserable. So why don't you try this camp? And it was for individuals with disabilities to learn how to be independent and live on their own, and sort of embody the independent living movement of like, it's time for them to take control of their own lives. And it's like this beautiful mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. Okay, it's like not a bad situation, but I'm like, I'm not doing it. And so I'm sitting there with the car doors locked, and everybody's like, just give her like her minute. She's gonna come out. It's gonna be fine. And Matt was a mentor there at the time, and he eventually rolls up to the window and he's like, look, like I know you don't want to be here, but like I promise it's gonna be really fun. Like, just come hang out with us. Just come check it out. If you don't like it, I'll take you home myself. Which, like, I don't know if he was actually going to do, but that's what he said. And I was like, okay. And my sister famously tells the story of, I did not want to go, but I turned around and I was like, well, he's cute, so I guess I'll just give it a shot. Like, maybe there's more cute people in there. Who knows? And it took me 2 days. I think it took us all like 2 days, maybe some even less, to be like, we never want to leave. And the piece to that that's so important isn't that we were doing therapy a couple hours a day, even. I mean, that stuff was good too, but it was like a house full of people who were disabled in one way or another. And I was like, wow, like they all get it. And how am I going to complain about not being able to like put on my pants when everybody here is having a hard time doing these things and trying to learn how to do it? Like, that just makes me a brat, right? Like, can't do that. And we did. It was life changing. It was life changing for Matt too. You want to tell him a little bit about how it helped you?
Sure. I was injured. I have a spinal cord injury that I got in my late teens, and I was able-bodied up until then, and just horsing around with my friends, like play wrestling, and then I became injured, C7 T1. So I've been living with a spinal cord injury since, and that is kind of a different situation in terms of adjustment. Of course, I felt like so many things were taken away from me, and that your life's basically over. And what was kind of cool about this community of people with disabilities that you got to be around was people at different stages of their recovery or leaning into getting used to their life with a disability. So there was, I didn't think I'd drive again. I didn't think I'd live on my own. I didn't think I'd date again. I didn't think I'd go back to school or get a job, or I really couldn't see myself, my new self in the wheelchair doing anything. It just, everything that my ignorant, able-bodied life didn't really prepare me for possibilities. And seeing other people in these other stages who already drive, this person already went back to school, and to just be around and to know, because that sense of community is like kind of hard to get when you're the only kid with a disability in your school. So that was like a huge thing for me to kind of show me that really everything, you ask, a person with a disability, a person, without a disability, what they have in common with the person in the wheelchair. And they're like, I can't imagine we have much in common, but then you switch it around and you ask the person in the wheelchair what you have in common with the able-bodied person. It's like basically everything except I use a wheelchair or, whatever the small differences, because really, everything else is still there for you.
And I think that's why that community is so important, right? Because they help you sort of reframe that difference. And so there I was in an environment, and as a 15-year-old girl, it's like all of the social aspects of my life opened up there too, because I didn't have to be self-conscious at all. I didn't have to question myself at all. I was just like one of the many. And I think that really helps in terms of like just being a normal teenager. And we got to spend, for those first couple of summers, we got to spend 8 weeks there. So it was a pretty good chunk of time to like really immerse yourself in this. And I think that speaks to how important having a community of people with disabilities for your kids is, just so that they can have people that they can relate to, right? They can have people that they can talk to freely, that aren't going to judge and that are going to understand what they're going through. And I think it did more for both of us socially than it did physically. I mean, we both happened to leave the camp completely independent, which is awesome and wonderful, right? We got to live on our own, and but that was also the first place where somebody said to me, like, "Where are you applying to college?" As opposed to like rewind to my first high school IEP meeting where the principal was like, "Oh no, I think we should just prepare her for a trade school," right? Like she should just go into like a working sort of sheltered employment program. And I was the one that said, no, like I want to get out of here. I want to go to college. And that camp was the first place to be like, that's totally doable, right? Like there's no reason you shouldn't do that. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And Matt and a bunch of the other people were already at the University of Arizona. So I eventually found my way here. He'll take all the credit for that, which is okay. That's where most of it should go. But first I went to school. I did 2 years in Florida. And that was my freshman and sophomore year. And that was like a big, do we let her go? You have to take a plane to get there. Like, I think that was the first time my parents were like really nervous and really questioning if I should do what was typical, right? They asked me to apply to a bunch of local schools, and I was like, all right, like I'll do it to make you happy. Long story short, I never applied to any local schools. They just thought I did. Because I was like, well, if I go there, like if I get in, they're going to make me go there because it's 20 minutes away. So I applied to a bunch of schools in Florida. I got in. I went. The first couple months were really hard, I think, because I had been like protected, right? I had been to this camp where everybody said this was going to be great and awesome. I lived in a community where everybody knew me and I was like fully participating. And so like, I didn't realize when I got there that I was going to get a lot of like, oh, we don't really know people with disabilities. And you're like one of 2 people on campus who uses a wheelchair and your other one happens to be your roommate. Right? Like, so, and thankfully we became really good friends. And so we helped each other through it. But those first couple months were a little iffy. But I tell that part of the story because I think it's important, because who adjusts to college like the first couple of days that you're there? I mean, maybe everybody doesn't have to deal with like the people making fun of you or different things, but it goes back to the dignity of risk, right? Like I called my mom so many times that first 2 months and I was like, I don't think I belong here. Like this is bad. She'll tell you from her side that she wanted to come pick me up and she didn't, because I worked really hard to get there. I went against what they told me to do to get there. And she was like, it's too important. So she would hang up and be upset, but she wouldn't come and get me. And I eventually found my place in a great group of friends. And I think Those 2 summers I was still going to Shake Leg. That was the camp. Matt and I both ended up working there. And a bunch of people there were at the U of A because we are second in the country for people with disabilities and accommodations and programs and all of that. So bear down, go U of A. But
Number one, adaptive sports. I would say.
number one in adaptive sport. So everybody at the camp was like, you have to come check out this school. You would love it. It's like this all year round. Like there's a whole community of disabled people. There's a bunch of adaptive sports. Come check it out. And so I did, and much like my Shake a Leg experience, I started filling out my application the day after I got here. And Matt was a good tour guide, and we hung out for a long weekend, and he showed me everything it had to offer, and it was just like, wow. Like, I went from a college where the Disability Resource Center was like an office in a building to like the Disability Resource Center is its own building with like a bunch of people to help you and an adaptive gym that all the equipment is modified and all of these like really awesome things. And so, yeah, there's like a wheelchair shop, there's like a bunch of things here. And you could just roll around campus and there's not a day that you don't see another disabled person just because there's a lot of us. So it doesn't mean you have to be friends with all of them. It just means like you are one of the many, and it's a nice feeling. And so we both ended up here. He ended up here 13 years ago. I ended up here. No, we're 14 and 13 now. Wow. And I transferred as a junior and went on to get my bachelor's, my master's, and my doctorate in rehabilitation, counseling, and mental health. I joke that I got all of those degrees because I didn't want to leave. So if I kept going to school, they couldn't kick me out. And yeah, Matt and I, we started, everybody wants to know when we started dating. I don't even know like the surefire, like truth to this answer, but once we had gone to the camp for a few years, we were always really good friends, and at some point, we were more than that. It kind of just morphed its way into a relationship over the years. And after a surgery that Matt had that took him away from Arizona for a while, he didn't have anywhere else to live coming back, and I was like, well, I have a guest room, and he's never left. So that was 9 years ago.
Yeah, that was nice of me because after I spent all that time talking Gabby into moving to Tucson and how perfect it is for people with disabilities and U of A in this, and she finally transfers and I get the notice that I have to go back for major spinal surgery, and I end up having to leave her here for months by herself right after she gets here, after I finally got her to be here. So we've been making up for the lost time ever since I've been able to get back.
Yeah. And I think an important part to our story too is disabled people are not immune to like the ups and downs of life, right? Like Matt and I didn't meet and it was like happily ever after. They're disabled, so they're gonna love each other and it's gonna be great, right? Like, I don't know if I can say bad words on here, but like dating is a bitch, okay? Like, it's, you know, like you're like, oh, I like this person and they like me. Like, it's all like, what should I wear? What should I do? You're not immune from all of that because you're disabled, right? Like, you still have to do all of that. And my first few years of college were really interesting because it was like, I would, you know, true story, I would try to go on a date with somebody and they would drive up, see that I was in a wheelchair and keep driving. Like, those things have happened to me. You know, you put yourself out there and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And we've had our ups and downs too, just like any other couple. I mean, people see us and they're like, oh, you're so cute. It must be so nice and perfect and yay. And I mean, it's wonderful, right? But I just want to make the point that like shielding your kids from heartbreak isn't going to work either. right? Like that's how I learned who I wanted to be with and what I wanted to do with my life was because I had experiences that were like, okay, that doesn't work out so well. Like, let's find somebody who loves me for me and wants to be with me for me, not because I'm also disabled, but because we love each other. And I think a lot of what we built in that, like when we first met, was that he was sort of like my motivation to do better and to like figure out what I could do with my life. And I was like, well, if he's doing it, I could probably do it. And that's what you want out of a relationship, right? You want the person that's gonna build you up and help you achieve things. And I think all of your kids deserve that too. It's just you're not immune to like all of the other stuff that happens along the way. And I think we've spent the last, what did I just say, 13 years here? And we've both grown a lot as people, but it's not without its challenges, I want to be really honest about that because we can come on here and say everything's roses and daisies, you know. I do think though that what I've learned in working in the independent living movement and becoming more of an advocate through this program and others for people with disabilities is that that part was missing from my life for a long time. I and Matt, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we got to the point where we weren't um, letting our disabilities hold us back, which is great, but it wasn't until I learned about the independent living movement and disability advocacy and how our rights, unfortunately, are still so different than so many people in this country that I was like, oh, okay, we need to make some changes. We need to wake up. We need to make our voices heard. And that shift for me of like making the disabled community have equality, for no, the simplest way to put it, helped me make the shift to be like a proud disabled woman. And I think that that's really important too, finding that community and learning how to be not just okay with your disability, not just like, oh, okay, it doesn't really impact my life that much, but making the shift to be like, I'm a disabled woman, and not only am I okay with that, but I wouldn't change it. Right? Like, it's my life, and it's afforded me so many opportunities. You want to say what it's afforded you?
Sure. I mean, and I know it might sound crazy to say, but like my spinal cord injury has worked out for me like so well. It's hard for me to even picture like the direction I was going in at the time, because I mean, I guess I guess I had to. I grew up a little fast, or if I had any if I was behind it all, it helped me to come up and really realize kind of what's important too. When I was injured, if I made a list of my 10 best friends that were definitely gonna have my back if anything happened to me, like maybe two of the names on that list were around post injury, and that was really tough. But what the made it okay was there was still 10 people on the list. There's just 8 people I didn't expect who stepped up, who I didn't realize I was as close with, or maybe in my whatever teenage I didn't think like, oh, this person's so cool, maybe they're and they like me and I think they're funny, so they're gonna have my back. And meanwhile, this guy who I I didn't realize was as great and as caring. I learned different values in people and in life that has really been able to make my life feel successful and worthwhile more than I could imagine. I think I saw a question in the chat that I'll try to answer about asking where the turning point was for me. in terms of like realizing those things were available or doable. And I think for me, it was a lot of like seeing examples and like literally being told that those things are possible. And it came from other people in similar positions. So a guy with a spinal cord injury who's a few more years down the road. And I'm like, well, I'll never X, Y, and Z. He's like, well, I've already X, Y, Z, W, and Q'd. And I was like, really? And then that just opens my mind up just from those words, and then if I actually see him get into his car, then I'm like, whoa, then it's really makes it concrete for me.
And I think I just want to be careful in saying that we're not saying this is easy, right? We're not like, oh, okay, this is how it should go and this is going to be easy. I know, and I'm not going to say I know as a parent because I don't have kids yet, but I know from the parents that I've helped, like what we are saying you should do is difficult at times, right? It's really hard to watch your kid struggle with something when you're like, I could just go in there and do it and it would take 5 minutes. Like when I was first learning how to get dressed by myself and then relearning at Chick-fil-A, I came home from that camp and I was like, Mom, I can do this. And we were like getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner or something, and it was literally taking me like 3 hours. And I'm sure 1,000 times she wanted to come up there and be like, can I just put on your pants? Like it'll take me 30 seconds, right? But now it takes me 20 minutes to get ready for the day because I've done it every day since, and I've learned what works for me. So like, sure, in the beginning it took 3 hours, but it doesn't anymore. And I think a lot of examples that applies to. I also think it helps you to be really, really thankful for like being able to do those things and like get you in the mindset of if I can't do it this way, that doesn't mean I can't do it. It just means like what other way is there to do it? I was, and Marianne always likes when I tell this story, I was at Pilot Parents, actually, it was one of our weekends, and one of my friends was having a big birthday, and she was like upset that I wasn't going to be in Tucson for it, so I was like, come to Phoenix, or, we'll hang out, like, you guys can stay at the hotel, we'll go out, there's like a university strip, you can go to like some bars and hang out, so I was like, we'll just make a night of it. And we... the three of us are all wheelchair users. I'll just like set the scene. And our nice like cohort of Pilot Parents was nice enough to help us load the car, right? Because we can all get in the car, but then when you have three wheelchair users like staring at the wheelchairs, it's like, well, okay. So they were nice enough to help us load the car. And then we go out and you don't think about it when you've had a few drinks and you're having fun, you're just like, oh, whatever, this is all gonna work out. And we've done it a million times where like, we just stop a really nice person, this is pre-COVID, and ask them to put our chairs in the car, and most people were really nice about it. But we parked on the second level of the parking garage, and so we're like, okay, what do we do? Like, we don't know, we've done this a million times, we've never been in this situation, what can we do? And I was like, all right, I know what to do. And we called the fire department. And I was like, look, this is really, I know this is like an unorthodox story, but like me and my three friends, we need help getting our equipment into the car. And he was like, okay, where are you? And we were like, in a parking garage. And my friend's wheelchair was already in the car because she's the only one that we can put in the car. So she was like, I can't even go like look at a cross street. Like, I don't know where we are. Our phones have no like map service because you're in a concrete parking garage. So we're like, we're on a parking garage somewhere by the university strip. Like, we don't know. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna like the fire truck is going to drive down the street. And when you see us out the window, you just tell me like, we see you, we're to your left. And that's what we did. And the fire truck comes down the street and we're like, all right, we're to your left or your right or whatever. And they came up and they put the chairs in the car and we said, thank you very much. And we went home. And most people, and I mean, I know you're all parents sitting there like, Jesus, my kid, what are you telling me to do? But like, that's just an example of like, it shouldn't have stopped us from going out, right? Were we sitting there like annoyed because we didn't know what we were going to do for 10 minutes? Sure. But did we eventually figure it out? Yeah. And I think that's the same, like, and to your point, like, at any point in my life, I made mistakes that people were like looking at my mother, like, why would you let her do that? And it was like, why wouldn't I let her do that? Like, yeah, did I go to a beach party with my siblings when I was 16 and was everybody drinking when they weren't supposed to be? Like, the answer is yes, but it wasn't like, oh, she's disabled, like, she's not going to make those mistakes. If anything, I was a few times I like got my sister out of things because it was like, oh, if Gabby went, like they were probably more careful. We were not, but I got her out of some binds and figured it out just like anybody else. I mean, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna make bad choices, but you learn from them, and it's all part of like growing up, I think. And I did get a question in the chat that usually a lot of you ask, so I'm glad that you did. It's always hard to cram everything I want to say into an hour because I could talk about this for a long time. But it's talking about I believe your son with autism and getting picked on in school. My first thing that I'll say about that is that unfortunately it happens, right? Just like any other example I've given here, we unfortunately can't really shield them from that because there's a lot of kids in society that just, I don't think it's malicious at their age at all. I think it's that they don't really understand. But what I will say about that is when I had those experiences in school, it made me a really good judge of character. And the two best friends that I found one in 8th grade and one in 7th grade. They're still around. So I had a smaller group of friends. It wasn't the typical school experience where you have like a group of people, but the three of us were very close and have helped each other through so much at this point. And they're my real friends, they're my true friends. And I think this experience helps us find those people that are going to stick by us and are going to be there. And they've both proven that they're going to be there. Them and my one best friend that I met when we both got to U of A, who also happens to be a chair user and was in the car when we called the fire department, right? Like, I don't know what I'd do without any of them. And I know that they're going to stick by me because they always have. I do think, and that's why I went into the field that I went into, and this, could be my biased opinion, but I think for somebody who has disabilities, having a counselor who also has disabilities, even if they're not the same ones, is really, really beneficial because you can come at it from like a disability empowerment, independent living standpoint, as opposed to like we're going to help you overcome your disability. Like, it's nothing to overcome. It's going to stay with me and for my whole life, right? So I think that perspective shift is important. And we've actually been really fortunate now to, Matt's actually wearing the shirt today. Empower Spinal Cord Injury is the baby that grew out of Shake a Leg in the program that we met at. And he gets to run their mentor program, and I get to counsel individuals with disabilities. And I think over the years, we've just seen like what that community can do and what having those conversations can do when it's in a space where people get you.
The best way to get that feeling of community a lot of times is if you can participate in sports and adaptive sports, then it's the same effect where you're with all the other friends and peers in chairs with in similar situations, and you just feel like you belong. And it's like, it's like a feeling that I can't give. I can't express how powerful it is.
This is awesome, and I really hate to end this part, but we're going to move on with our schedule. Thank you again, Matt and Gabby. Loved having you here.
It was really good doing it to all, and our contact info and social media is in the chat, so really don't hesitate to reach out. This is what we love to do.